Hello again, everyone. Deflect here, Firm with Fair Gaming. Wanted to do a review season 4 slash tank slash healer, how they ended up, and how it compared to preseason tier list, week 1 or week 2 tier list. And then, obviously everyone knows the God comp that happened again, and that was predicted as usual. But let's see how they fared out anyway for the rest of them. Everyone knows, that DH, Resto Druid, Shadow Priest, Fire Mage, Og Evoker. Now they switched up Fire some of the time for Frost, but it was a God comp again, and that was already known going into it. I did think they were going to nerf the sigils a lot sooner than what they did. The illuminated sigils for the double one, they did not. Hence why DH was just running away with it. Now, as for this tier list, we can just put DH in S tier. Vengeance was, up until the nerf of illuminated sigils, it was just running away with things more than ever. Now, the other tanks kind of came in at different spots, and I went through to review them. I went through the top players in each spec, so you can just go to Mythic Plus, see the leaderboard, and then I did the average of the top player, and then the top 5 average, and the bottom like 36 to 40 average as well, because that kind of gives you a variant of how the bottom's filling out. Because some might have I'll use Druid for a perfect example. They have Squish Vegan, who actually has brought Druid up dramatically, as they ran 2 different Druids, number 1 and number 2. This is actually the same person, and they're the only one basically over 3,600, and they're almost 38. So almost 200 IO ahead of the next Druid. That's why you have to bring in the bottom, because the bottom kind of equalizes it out at the 36 to 40, and you can really see where they're sitting. So to go in about this, well, we might as well just go to Druid right now. How did Druid fare? Well, I thought Druid initially was going to do a lot better than what they were. I thought Squish Vegan and a couple others were going to bring it up a lot higher, but everyone seemed to go to DH, so not a lot of people were playing Druid. Druid did end up in 3rd place, and they were still pretty well. Squish Vegan had the 3rd highest IO, so at 3,800, they were 3,800. There was only one tank. Sorry, he had the 2nd highest IO. There was only one tank group that was higher, and that is DH. And DH is in a league of their own. The bottom 5 on the first page averaged higher than Squish Vegan themselves. They finished at 3,815, where Squish Vegan's top IO was 3,801. So even the bottom players, that's why people were playing DH, were just crushing it. Druid, though, with Squish Vegan, if Squish Vegan played the top 5 people, it would have really brought it up, but that would have made the tier list unfair. Anyways, due to incorporating the bottom, I would have to put them basically lower A. Brewmaster's easy to rank. Monk was right about here. They were the only tank not to have someone over 3,700 IO. Their bottom 5 averaged over 120 IO less than the next lowest. So that's how low they were. They just did not do well. If you go here, if you were a monk and a brewmaster and you were wanting to be in the top 40, all you had to do was complete 15s. You didn't even have to do anything else. A 13 here and a 16 here. That's it. It was not good. Not good for brewmaster. But that's okay. They're still a fun spec, and that's what I still played. So we're still having a good time on brewmaster. Pallies, on the other hand, Pallies were the top guy was 3713. The bottom average 3383. So they're all kind of, the bottom was close. They were close to the bottom Druids, but I'm gonna have to give them a little tier break because the top Druid was that much higher. Blood DKs ended up actually finishing worse than quite anticipated with the legendary. They finished behind Pallies. The top DK was just slightly above the top Paladin, but the top 5 averaged lower, and the bottom 5 averaged lower as well. So they're just behind Paladin in the rankings, but they are still behind Paladin. Now, the one at the start that I did not have in the rankings in the right spot came in strong was the Prot Warrior. It actually beat out Druid. Now, the top Prot Warrior did finish 60 IO below Squish Vegan, but the top 5 averaged 20 IO above the top 5 Druids. And the bottom 5 for the Warriors, I say bottom 5, that's the 36 to 40, averaged almost 60 IO higher than the bottom 5 Druids. So that is how it ended up looking. Now you're going to ask, how did it look compared to the other tier lists? Well, tier list number 1, this was the preseason tier list, and it got, I was a little off. I had Blood DK and Pally kind of in the right order. I did have Prot Warrior. I underestimated them for sure. So they moved up, and I overestimated the Druids. But all in all, pretty close. Season 1 week tier list. Season week 1 tier list. How did it end up? Well, we didn't. The season 1 ended up pretty close the way it ended, other than Prot Warriors moving up. So Prot Warriors really jumped here. They moved up quite a bit, which isn't a bad thing. So, it could have been worse, but yeah, Prot Warriors I definitely underestimated. That wraps it up, though. We were, I would say, pretty close. 1 or 2 minor changes off, and we were bang on from preseason to regular. So I would have dropped Brewmaster 1 more bar down and Prot Warrior up, and then I guess Brewmaster could have stayed there. Prot Warrior up and Druid up, Druid behind Vengeance, and we were there. Anyways, that's how it ended up. Always fun to look back. So that was, I don't know, it was an interesting season. I really thought that Vengeance was going to get nerfed much, much before it did. Continuing on, if you don't want to watch the healer section, by all means, hit that like, subscribe button. Thanks for tuning into the tank section. Next, we are going to do healers. And how did the healers end up? Well, healers were a different story. Healers, obviously, we're just going to put Resto Druid right here. It's the same as Vengeance. They ran together. That's what it is. S tier. That's how they ended up. We're going to go in and, those are some of the keys that people were complaining about that they did balance for like the first pull or two. And then they're like, yo, you can run the key without a healer. No, they didn't, but we won't get into that again. Going on to healers came up in a weird spot. So we're going to go number 2. It was Mistweaver Monk. I thought they were going to fall off a lot harder because I thought a lot more people were actually going to switch to Resto Druid and to the other ones that were doing better. But they did not end up doing that. And actually, Mistweaver Monks, they still ended up fairly well. They ended up, 3,800. They're the only other healer above 3,800 other than Resto Druid for their top 1. Holy Priest was very close, but just slightly under. Speaking of that, that's where exactly Holy Priest goes, is right behind. They were so close. One guy was only 2.4 IO away from 3,800. Very close. The top 5 averaged just 10 IO below Mistweavers, and the bottom 5 averaged just 8 below Mistweavers. So hand in hand, very close, battling it out. Now, speaking of that, Resto Shaman has to go right here as well, because Resto Shaman was almost identical IO to Holy Priest. Almost to a T. They were 0.4 away on the top player. They were only 8 away on the top 5 and only 5 away on the bottom 5. Almost bang on. Now to have a new section for the next ones. Presevoker comes in at the solid one just below it. Not too far. Presevoker was very close in the top IO, but started to fall off just ever so slightly. Not crazy, but started to fall off on the top 5 average and the bottom 5 average. They did, however, pull almost identical to Holy Paladin, which was a huge shock. Everyone's complaining about Holy Paladin the way they were, but they almost bang on for average. Top player was 37.93 in both. Top 5 average is 37.30, 37.34, and bottom 5 average 34.28 both. So almost a straight up tie for Presovoker and Holy Paladin, which was a huge shock after all the complaints about Holy Paladin, how they weren't good anymore, and they needed to rework. Now they are looking very good in the War Within. If you haven't seen my previous video, I have them as one of the top healers going into the expansion. Not to forget about, last but not least, we'll just throw Disc Priest right here. That's a big thing because it was a lot because of Holy Priest became doing more damage, and they couldn't heal quite as well, but they could heal good enough to get way up there, and the damage they brought was crazy. It's always funny when Holy Priest is doing more damage than Disc, because Disc needs to do damage to heal, and yeah, it's just a weird situation. Disc needs a little bit of work going into the next expansion for sure. How did that fare versus the pre-season predictions? Pre-season prediction. Number 1, I had Resto Druid right. I had Holy Priest slightly higher than Mistweaver, which was pretty close. I really thought Mistweaver was actually going to drop off due to the lack of people playing it because of some of the nerfs. It did not drop off that much. But Resto Druid was there. Resto Shaman was there. Just basically Mistweaver's in the wrong spot. And if you could take Disc out, you could just drop Disc down to the bottom. It would have been almost bang on. B and C was very close. I put C, Presovoker, just down, and these two could swap spots if they're tied, so it doesn't really matter. That makes it visually better. I just thought with the range limitation on Presovoker that it was going to do a little worse, and the tier set was very good for it, but I just thought the range was going to have more effect on it than what it did. To be fair, Presovokers that were playing were very good, and they did very well. Now, how did that compare to the week 1? Week 1 is almost identical to how it fared out at the end. Again, week 1, people were still playing Disc. Disc ended up dropping out a little more, and that's pretty much it. Presovoker and, again, H-Pally kind of switched because people went back to Paladin, and they ended up tied. So it kind of almost week 1 was a telltale sign of how it was going to end. It was very close, but this being the preseason, this being the week 1, and this being how the outcome turned out. Anyways, that is the wrap up for tanks and healers from season 4. Let me know what your thoughts were, if you really had any questions on that, if there's anything else that you guys had some thoughts on. Anyways, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, deflect, Firm but Fair Gaming. We'll see you in the next video.